In this lesson, you will gain an understanding of the basic chemistry of peracetic acid. It includes an overview of the rules of use and handling and equipment considerations to minimize potential incidents. We'll also go over storage safety, the necessary personal protective equipment to keep you safe, shipping and packaging, and emergency response guidelines. Evonik Active Oxygens manufactures peracetic acid in North America at Memphis, Tennessee and Tonawanda, New York, as well as globally in Asia and Europe. You may not realize the many ways you have benefited from peracetic acid. It's used for numerous applications, including sanitization applications, disinfectant and sterilant applications, chemical synthesis. It is used as a food processing antimicrobial for poultry, red meat, seafood, and fruits and vegetables. An antimicrobial for aseptic and extended shelf life packaging and equipment. Wastewater and cooling water treatment, oil and gas well operations, agricultural waters treatment, and livestock watering systems, as well as pulp and paper mill systems. Peracetic acid exists in equilibrium with hydrogen peroxide, acetic acid, and water, so a solution of PAA will always have varying amounts of the 4 different compounds. Given enough time, PAA decomposition reaction will go to completion. The product will break down and you are left with acetic acid, which is vinegar and hydrogen peroxide, which further degrades to oxygen and water. Evonik has the technical knowledge to create stable PAA solutions, which is what we provide to our customers. PAA equilibrium chemistry's rate of formation is dependent on the concentration and purity of starting materials, temperature, and catalyst. The rate of decomposition of peracetic acid is dependent on several factors, including impurities, both organic and inorganic. Many metals, for example, are inorganic contaminants which lead PAA to instability. Temperature also plays a key role in PAA stability. The higher the storage temperature, the faster the decomposition of the PAA solution. Evonik manufactures several different grades and concentration of peracetic acid for different industries and different applications. Typically, a peracetic acid formulation is identified by the peracetic acid content, followed by the hydrogen peroxide content. For example, a 22-5 PAA would refer to a peracetic acid formulation containing 22% peracetic acid and 5% hydrogen peroxide. The table represents the chemical properties of Evonik's various peracetic acid formulations. Physically, the characteristics of peracetic acid are similar across the various formulations that Evonik manufactures. It is a clear liquid with a stinging, pungent, vinegar-like odor. It has a specific gravity that is slightly higher than water. Its boiling point varies with grade and concentration, and it has a freezing point much lower than water. A 1% solution has a pH of approximately 2 to 3. All Evonik peracetic acid products are stabilized solutions. This protects the PAA solution from small amounts of contamination from metal ions, counteracting catalytic decomposition. Metal ions can act as a catalyst and rapidly decompose PAA, especially metals like iron, cobalt, nickel, zinc, chromium, and manganese. No amount of stabilizer can protect PAA from gross contamination. Contamination and temperature cause decomposition, which is very typical in peroxygen chemicals. Because the peracetic acid decomposition rate is faster with increase in temperature, Evonik recommends that peracetic acid should be stored at less than 30 degrees centigrade or 86 degrees Fahrenheit in order to maintain product quality. Peracetic acid should be stored out of direct sunlight. Keep in mind that decomposition generates heat, which helps to accelerate the reaction. The decomposition rate is expected to double for every 10 degrees Celsius increase in the product temperature. There are 4 rules you should know about the safe use and handling of peracetic acid. First, never contaminate the product. Second, never confine it. Third, never personally expose yourself to it or have it contact incompatible materials. And finally, always have water available. Rule 1. Never contaminate. While the stabilizer added to Evonik's peracetic acid will counteract small amounts of contaminants, the product should still be handled and stored carefully. However, you should know that the stabilizer cannot offset gross contamination. So what happens if peracetic acid becomes contaminated? It will rapidly decompose, and that could cause safety issues. What are the sources of contamination? Certain metals, dirt, and many chemicals can start the decomposition process. You should be aware that peracetic acid will release large volumes of oxygen and heat when it decomposes, especially the undiluted product. Peracetic acid has 2 of the 3 components of the fire triangle. Remember that each PAA solution has a flash point and contains certain amounts of combustible components that could also be a fuel source. It's important to understand the equipment surfaces that come into contact with PAA. Some materials are compatible with concentrated PAA, while some materials are only recommended with the diluted product. Additionally, some materials may only be suitable for a short-term contact. If there are any questions regarding materials of construction for PAA service, please contact Evonik for further information. Next, let's turn to the equipment considerations for peracetic acid. You must use only approved materials of construction with PAA solutions, and the equipment must be dedicated for PAA service. All stainless steel equipment, 304L or 316L stainless steel, must be properly passivated prior to PAA service. Systems must be designed so PAA cannot be confined. This means that pressure relief valves and vents must be provided between valves and trap points in a piping system, and all ball valves must be vented. Additionally, all PAA storage vessels must be provided with properly sized emergency relief vents. Remember that Evonik can assist in all design and engineering considerations for PAA feed systems. PAA vessels and containers must be provided with an adequate venting system to handle routine product transfers. The system must be designed to prevent airborne contaminants from entering the PAA solution while minimizing employee exposure to fumes. Provisions must be implemented to prevent backflow of process streams into a PAA container. The reverse is also a consideration, and forward feed provisions should be considered. You do not want peracetic acid flowing into a process unconstrained, possibly overdosing a process and creating an uncontrolled reaction. Appropriate containment should be provided in the event of a leak or spill, typically by way of a containment dike, a double-wall tank, or a containment deck. Safety shower and eye wash stations should be installed in the vicinity of PAA storage and handling systems in accordance with OSHA and ANSI standards. Additionally, a water source should be available wherever PAA is used. Rule 2. Never confine. Peracetic acid must not be confined because an inherent property of PAA is the slow release of oxygen over time due to normal decomposition. The recommended routine venting provisions include breather vents, pressure relief in piping, and vented valves. PAA can release upwards of 100 times its volume in gas during decomposition. When caused by atypical contamination or heating, this can happen rapidly. The recommended emergency venting provisions include using pressure relief valves, rupture disc and fusible plugs, and free lift manways. Adequate ventilation must be provided for PAA storage areas. For quality purposes, Evonik does not recommend storage of PAA for prolonged continuous exposures to temperatures greater than 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees centigrade, as the product will lose assay more rapidly. These conditions should be avoided whenever possible. In addition, make sure that it is not stored in direct sunlight, near reducing agents, combustibles, or other non-compatibles. You will also want to make sure that the vents on the containers are not blocked and the containers are upright. It is important to maintain adequate spacing between pallets and IBCs. Peracetic acid is an organic peroxide and has corrosive and oxidizing properties. You will want to refer to the appropriate NFPA code for product storage, building design, and spacing requirements. Rule 3. Never contact. Every location must have the appropriate safety response equipment. This includes safety showers and eye washes near all working positions. All eye wash stations must be clearly identified. A water source, such as a hose, must be available wherever PAA is used. You should always know where the first aid equipment is located. When handling PAA solutions, always wear the proper personal protective equipment, also known as PPE. Protect your eyes by wearing chemical-type goggles whenever handling or mixing PAA solutions or PAA concentrates. A face shield provides an additional level of protection. You should protect your hands and arms with general-purpose neoprene gloves. Protect your body with a compatible chemical impervious suit or apron. Wear neoprene chemical boots. Consult Evonik and PPE manufacturers to determine appropriate compatibility. We will now review some hazards due to exposure to PAA. If you get peracetic acid in your eyes, it is severely irritating. An acute exposure may cause irreversible eye damage, including loss of vision. If you get it on your skin, it is severely irritating, corrosive, and acute exposure to the liquid may cause severe burns. Consult the SDS for peracetic acid industrial hygiene exposure limits. Recommended maximum exposure limits are identified by the ACGIH, OSHA, and NIOSH. Do not ingest PAA. Peracetic acid is slightly toxic by ingestion and can be corrosive to the esophagus and stomach. We will now review the exposure hazards for PAA at use concentrations. The term at use refers to the diluted forms of the chemical used in various applications. Typically, this range is 0.4% PAA or less. PAA is usually diluted with water, so at-use concentration solutions are mostly water. However, it should still be considered as chemical solution and treated with respect. At-use concentrations can still have a strong, irritating odor. For the at-use concentration solutions, exposure to the eyes is irritating, and acute exposure may cause eye damage. For the skin, chemical contact may be irritating, corrosive, and acute exposure to the liquid may cause a rash. Regarding inhalation, studies indicate that at-use concentration solutions should not provide acetic acid and hydrogen peroxide levels greater than the OSHA PEL limits for both substances. Proper ventilation should be installed to prevent personal exposure. Ingestion may be irritating to gastric tissue at levels less than 200 ppm. LD50 is not determined for use at concentrations of less than 200 ppm. If you come in contact with PAA, what do? If you don't know, always refer to the SDS. It's important to know how to handle these emergencies before the incident. If you get it in your eyes, wash them immediately with copious amounts of water for at least 15 minutes. Make sure your eyelids are open. After washing your eyes, you should contact a physician. If you get PAA on your skin, wash the area immediately with copious amounts of water and remove any contaminated clothing. Again, once you are sure you have flooded the area adequately, contact a physician. What do if you inhale concentrated PAA? You will want to get out of the area to fresh air. If you are helping a victim, administer CPR and give oxygen as required. If you swallow PAA, then drink plenty of water, but do not try to vomit. Call a physician or a poison control center immediately. Rule 4. Always have water available. Always have water available, particularly when fighting fires or to quench a decomposition reaction. Water is the key word. Use only water spray on all fires involving peracetic acid. Chemical fire extinguishers must not be used. If there is a fire, use water to cool peracetic acid drums, and make sure you are wearing a self-contained breathing apparatus and full protective clothing to include full eye protection. Only individuals with proper training and safety equipment should respond to any hazardous situations. If you find PAA in a warm or bulging drum, don't approach, move, or agitate it. You can cool the drum with water from a distance. If any other drums are nearby, move them away if it can be done safely, then call for assistance. If PAA is leaking, you will want to stop the leak and dike the spill, but do this only if you can do it without personal risk. If the PAA container is punctured, move or roll the drum so the punctured area is above liquid level. Shut off or remove all ignition sources. Next, remove combustible or organic material from the area and flush all contacted surfaces with at least 20 volumes of water. You do not want to let any undiluted material enter the sewer or into any confined spaces. Remember that a peracetic acid spill may be reportable under state or federal law. How do you dispose of peracetic acid? First, remember that undiluted PAA must never be poured down drains or directly into sewers. Any unused or undiluted PAA solutions that become waste material are classified as hazardous waste due to their low pH and oxidizing properties. One method to dispose of PAA is to dilute it with at least 20 volumes or more of water and allow the PAA solution to decompose. Then you can discharge the solution into a suitable treatment system, but make sure you are in accordance with all local, state, and federal rules and regulations. In all cases, call for assistance. In summary, you have seen how PAA is a strong oxidizer with many useful applications, but it is also a hazardous chemical, and it must be treated with respect. You have also seen that rapid PAA decomposition releases heat and large volume of oxygen, which can overpressurize equipment and intensify a fire. Remember the 4 rules and use of handling peracetic acid. Never contaminate, never confine, never contact, and always have water available. Always wear appropriate personal protective equipment when handling PAA solutions. Know the importance of following the proper emergency response procedures when handling fires, warm or bulging drums, leakage or spills, and the disposal of PAA. Always review the following prior to shipping, handling, or storing PAA: safety data sheets, bill of lading, Department of Transportation requirements, and the emergency response information. And finally, always adhere to all PAA storage specifications. Contact Evonik if you have any PAA safety and handling questions. Congratulations! You have completed handling and storing peracetic acid.
Evonik, leading beyond chemistry.